Do you know what time it is? It's supernatural story time. And if you're easily scared, and even if you're not, there's only one thing left to do. Just turn off the lights, because these are stories that you listen to only in the dark. Don't Go in the Woods, Volume 6. About 2 years ago, I lived in an old house outside of city limits in western Alabama. Wild hogs are considered a nuisance in this part of the country and thus year-round game. The land wasn't mine, but it was legal hunting ground, so my landlord gave me and my friends explicit permission to take care of any hogs we came across. So a lot of the time, especially during the winter when this encounter took place, I was posted up on my back porch with a cigar and a gun, either by myself or with company. This land wasn't very clear. In fact, we only had about 20 feet from the porch to the tree line. Then it would go down a hill and the brush would get thicker. So our hunting was just being quiet and looking for the beady eyes of hogs in the foliage when we heard rustling. So, all that being said, one night during my porch sitting, I heard some rustling. I started scanning the woods for this hog and eventually did come across a set of white beady eyes. They weren't hog's eyes though, because these were eyes level with mine. As my eyes continued to adjust, the rest of the creature started coming into view. It was tall, thin, and had long, spindly arms and legs. Its entire body was completely black. I couldn't make out any other facial features besides the eyes, but what I could make out was that this thing was actually a good ways down the hill, so the fact it was still at eye level with me meant it was likely about 10 feet tall. It started up the hill, moving towards me, and I had this feeling in my gut that 45 caliber bullets probably weren't going to do much here. So I slowly collected my things and I headed back into the house. It didn't make any sound as it moved, other than the slight crunch of leaves. As it climbed the hill, it somewhat stopped at the tree line, then turned and walked along the edge of it. It bobbed and lurched a bit as it walked, kind of how some large birds bob their head as they move. That was the most terrified I had been in a long while. My hunting buddies and I saw it several times walking through the trees a good bit away from the house, sometimes turning to look at us. My roommate that moved in later that same year once walked outside and saw it right up against the porch, looking right down at her. It never tried to attack anyone or even acted aggressively, so we eventually stopped being as scared, though still very cautious, and started calling him Big Boy. I've told a couple of other friends about this. One of them said the description and behavior matched something called a California dark watcher. I did my research, and as much as this creature matches up, this was on the opposite end of the continent. I'm still not 100% sure what it was that I saw, but I am 100% sure I saw it. Multiple people did. Eventually, I spoke to my old roommate, who did see it up close. She said it was more eerie than downright scary. It looked at her like it was curious, tilting its head to the side like a dog when you're holding something at once. My hunting buddies and I saw it from 30 to 50 feet away, but she ended up being closer than all of us. She confirmed no features other than eyes, but it had sunken in spaces in the face where there would be features. Even now, I wonder what it is. What do you think? Story number 2. I think I had my own encounter with a dark watcher, but this happened in Vermont, in rural Vermont, and I was just a kid. I remember my friend and I were playing with Nerf guns out in the woods behind my house, looking for Slender Man, but then we sort of dropped that and just hung out and walked around. All of a sudden, I got this eerie feeling, like we were being watched, like something was off. It was super foggy. We continued walking through the woods a little, but I was on edge. Mind you, we lived less than a half mile from a graveyard, and these woods were maybe 300 yards from it. I walked around a tree, and swear to God, I saw a featureless face about 12 feet off the ground. I didn't think before turning and running. My friend and I both did, and I noticed what made me feel off. The bugs and peepers that were always chirping nonstop had been completely silent. They resumed a minute or two later. We were convinced we saw Slender Man then, but now I'm not so sure. Next story. I grew up in mid-Alabama and eastern Alabama, and there are stories I've heard all my life about weird noises in the woods. My uncle lived kind of off the beaten path, and they would hear screaming and remembers a very large something bedded down right outside his window, large and left an odor that lingered. My personal experience is when my grandparents had a cabin out on a small lake, and we would spend summer vacations there. We knew the layout of the lake and could get around it with just a trolling motor. One night, we got on the aluminum boat and just kind of scrolled around the lake, knowing approximately where we were on the lake. On the far side, I remember hearing some rustling. Outside of that, it was completely quiet, which is what we were looking for, so we cut the trolling motor to listen more closely. Pitch black, and we didn't have a flashlight. I was 12. I don't know why we didn't. All of a sudden, there was a massive splash that sounded like 10 feet away, close enough to almost get wet from it. We hightailed it back to the cabin because it really startled us. My dad thought it was a beaver smacking its tail, which it could be. Never noticed beavers before, but I've always wondered about it because I've also heard weird noises and screams, and not an owl or any bird. I know those sounds, so I wonder, what was it really? What was so big that could have made that splash? Next story. So let's all be honest here. Everyone knows that the rake is nothing more than a creepypasta. However, you cannot deny that people around the world are seeing and having legitimate experiences with this creature, or rather one that resembles the being in the stories, myself included. I've grown up with relatively an open mind in regards to strange phenomena and things that aren't generally accepted by mainstream science or society, but always approach things with appropriate skepticism. I've spent a very large majority of my life in the woods hunting, fishing, and mountain climbing, miles deep in the backcountry, and so within all of that time, I've observed many different animals, plants, and sometimes things I just simply cannot explain. I've gone camping and trekking solo many times in my life. It was liberating to just pack whatever you needed to survive and go miles deep into the backcountry where animals aren't even afraid of you simply because they aren't familiar with humans. It felt so special to be the only one immersed in that environment, but not anymore. Now, hidden behind all the natural beauty is an underlying anxiety, fear, and legitimate danger. An environment that once felt so comforting and therapeutic turned into one that drove me absolutely mad with questions and uncertainties, and is now one I will not enter alone, for I know what is possible and what is truly roaming around the forests of North America. It was 2016 in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania that I saw a creature that forever changed my life and the way I perceive the world we live in. The first time I had ever heard of the creature dubbed the Rake was during a conversation with a friend who had lived in the area for years and had encountered this creature on multiple occasions in very close proximity to his house. I remember him asking me if I had ever seen anything strange in a large plot of woods across the street from his house, which at the time I had not. However, long before it was brought up, I always had a deep feeling in my chest about this plot of woods. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it carried a very heavy, dark energy that was strong enough to encourage you to stay out. My friend took out their phone and showed me the picture of the rake that comes up in most generic pictures. I laughed it off as he warned me about the creature because I genuinely thought he was just growing marijuana or something in the woods and didn't want me to find out. I couldn't have been any more wrong. Months passed, a little more than strange noises at night and the sound of some cats being carried off into the dark, until the day that changed my life. It was midnight. A rainstorm had just dumped a bunch of rain, and me and a co-worker at the time had just clocked out, and we were heading to the friend's house who had warned me originally about the creature. His house is on a long straight road with a dead end, very few houses on one side, woods on the other. As we were heading down the road with high beams on, my co-worker slammed on the brakes and started freaking out, saying that he had just seen a creature kneeling down the shoulder of the road. Instantly, without thought, I jumped out of the car and immediately heard running and crashing through the woods in a parallel line to the road. Thankfully, due to the hard braking, the car shifted slightly so that the high beams were pointed into the woods, and that's when I saw it. That's when my life changed. My beliefs shattered, and my reality turned upside down. A 6-foot tall naked creature with grayish white skin and long arms ran through the section of the woods, fully illuminated by the headlights, giving me at least 15 seconds of uninterrupted visual contact with the creature, firmly imprinting it into my head. It ran just like a human being, however, was incredibly fast and jumping over any obstacle in the way until it reached the point where the headlights no longer illuminated the woods. It then pretended to jump and run deeper into the woods. However, it actually turned and headed back to the road, where I lost sight of it in the dark part of the woods for about 30 seconds. As I was standing in the middle of the road, absolutely dumbfounded, with my jaw to the floor, trying to comprehend the severity of the situation, it then crawled out from the woods and crossed the road on all fours, about 60 yards away from me, and disappeared into the woods on the other side. I've been tormented by the creature since then. It makes me confused, sad, curious. I can't get the image out of my head. I can't forget the feelings this creature gave me while I lived there, playing and toying with my head and waking life and in my dreams. I don't go into the backcountry alone anymore. I can't enjoy the solitude without anxiety ruining it. I can't be free. This creature exists, and so do others that just are not understandable. And it's important that people realize this so they can enjoy nature while also being safe. I'm not sure how this would be taken, and I'm not really sure why I feel this way now, but it's eating me alive. It's giving me crippling anxiety, and I have to do something to try to get this off my chest. Believe me or not, it doesn't matter to me. I just want people to be safe, and I want my freedom back. And all I can say is that the world truly isn't all that it seems. Next story. This story was told to me by my uncle and swears it really happened. He was the only one in the family this happened to, so no one else could back his story. I don't know if I believe this myself, but here we go. In 1979, there was a 12-year-long civil war in El Salvador. My uncle was in the military. He was sent to the woods and the jungles with like 6 other guys to go look for militia groups that were supposedly camping out there. After walking in the woods for hours, which really these weren't woods, they were jungle, they suddenly felt the ground shake as if something big was coming towards them. He described it like in Jurassic Park, when the T-Rex is coming towards them and the water ripples. He said they thought it was the enemy doing something, so they hid. He said that he was shocked when he saw a giant. He said it was walking in the distance. I asked him if it was just maybe a really, really big person like Bigfoot, and he said no. It was more of a Jack and the Beanstalk kind of giant. He said there were trees blocking the view somewhat, but that he could make out that it was a really big human. He said it was as tall as the tallest tree there. He said he tried to get a good look at it, but he was terrified and didn't want to get out of his hiding when he realized what it was. He said the giant basically just walked past them. He said they were all terrified and waited there for a while as they were too scared to bump into one another. He said 2 other guys suggested trying to kill it to get rich, but the guy in charge told them to stand down. My uncle said everyone thought they were idiots for suggesting such a thing. He said they walked back to base as quickly and quietly as possible. They told everyone when they got back. No one believed them. They were friends with the pilots, and the pilots called bullshit on their story because they flew over the jungle all the time, and they would have seen such a creature, especially if it was as tall as the trees as they claimed. He said all the guys described what they saw. One guy claimed that it appeared bald. Another guy said he thinks it had some sort of loincloth like Tarzan. My uncle emphasized that he didn't get a good look and that all he knows is that the ground was shaking as if some really big creature was coming towards them. He saw what appeared as a human, a giant human, walking in the distance. He got down and hid and waited till it was gone. I began to ask him things like, if it was real, don't you think they would have found a body or some bones or something, especially that big? And since this is El Salvador, it's tiny in relation to other parts of the world. He responded along the lines of, I don't know about none of that stuff. I just know what I saw that day. I don't know how I feel about this one personally. This one seems a little bit out there. My mom said maybe it was some sort of spirit that just made itself appear as a giant to scare them. During the Civil War times, my mom claimed there was a lot more paranormal things going on because of all the deaths that were happening. A lot of innocent people were being killed. My grandma would say if you looked out the window of the house, you would see dead bodies on the streets. That wouldn't explain the ground shaking, though. This one scared me as a kid. It's so unbelievable. But that if he actually did see that, that's just crazy. Next story. This was a few years ago, but it really stuck with me just for how strange it was. And I'm hoping that this will help me maybe, like, if not forget it, just deal with it. Anyway, I was heading out of my house at around 6 a.m. It was summer, so I took my walks at sunrise to avoid the daytime heat. I had done this many times and had my walk down to a science. Just my muscle memory could get me through. So shortly after leaving my home, I was heading up the road towards the highway. I lived behind a school, so I was very aware of the roads and vehicles, even if I was distracted by something else, which I was. As I walked down this road, I was going through playlists on my MP3 player. I was almost right on the first intersecting road by the time I found what I wanted to listen to and looked up. Everything was normal, and there were no cars to be seen, which made sense as it was a Saturday morning, so I continued up towards the highway where there was a sidewalk. But about 3 intersections from the highway, I noticed a shadow on the school zone sign ahead of me. Figuring it was mine, I just kept walking. I was only 2 intersections away when a disturbing thought hit me. I was walking east. There was no way this shadow belonged to me. And since there was absolutely no one around, there was no way on earth that that shadow was really a shadow. And as if it could read my thoughts and my sudden fear, a figure stepped out into the intersection right behind the school. And the only thing I can figure is that it was a gray alien. It had all the features: spindly limbs, enormous head, gigantic black eyes, and barely a nose, ears, or lips to speak of. For anyone else, this would have been time to panic and run. But my military training kicked in. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it wanted. But I knew it had no place this close to my home and my children. So I charged it, hoping at the very least to run it off, or better still, find some way to capture it. Of course, under both of those desires, I wanted to kill it. To this day, I don't know why I wanted to kill it. Maybe it was part of my training that had stuck into my brain, or maybe it was because this being was undoubtedly a threat, at least in my mind. I don't think aliens come all the way to our neck of the intergalactic woods just to hide behind signs. There was something going on here, and I had to fix it. The next thing I know, I'm standing in the intersection. The creature was gone. Naturally, I was confused. The sun was higher than it should have been, and a quick glance at my MP3 player showed that I'd missed at least 10 songs. By my best guess, I was missing nearly half an hour of time. Now, scared and disoriented, I turned back and walked home. It was already getting hot, and heat stroke was not going to help me sort out everything that had just happened. I haven't told this story to anyone other than my parents and a single friend. We all agreed that this was something strange and that whatever it was definitely not right. Even now, years later, I wonder what I really saw. Was it really an alien? Did I honestly try to capture and kill an actual extraterrestrial? I don't have those answers, and that scares me. But one thing is, I don't think I got abducted. I don't have weird dreams, and I couldn't find any mysterious marks anywhere on my body. The only thing that I can't explain is a painful feeling in my upper left arm. It feels like there's something in there, but x-rays have shown nothing. Could it be that I was tagged by this creature, the same way we tag animals for study? Another question I can't answer. That scares the daylights out of me. This pain has not gone away, but I become accustomed to it. Maybe one day I'll be able to get better scans of my arm and see if maybe a different machine could see what the x-rays couldn't. If you have any ideas, what do you think it might have been? Now, sometimes I do feel paranoid, and I felt paranoid for a long time. I felt like something was lurking behind me, no matter where I was or where I was looking. The odd thing is that I would have one of these episodes just about every 1 or 2 days. And then I moved to a new house on the other side of town. And I haven't had a single episode in over 2 weeks. I think it might be related. It makes me think, was I being watched all the time? I was living in my former house. Next story. This happened about 10 years ago on Scenic Loop, driving towards Bourne in Texas. We saw a little humanoid. It was white, though not black, and it stumbled out of some tall grass by the side of the road, naked and luminous, in the flare of our headlights, clearly visible for a handful of seconds. My brother drives like a mild-mannered father of 4, so whatever it was had time to cast one slight, sharp glance our way, then scamper across the asphalt into some more tall grass on the other side, disappearing into the southern night. We looked at each other and went, "What the hell?" and kept driving. We were en route to some business we couldn't be late for, so that was all the hubbub we gave it. It was small, chalk white, hairless, and humanoid, but not typical. It looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy, but more like if the Pillsbury Doughboy did meth and got Christian bailed. It also moved like it knew where it was going and had as much time for us as we had for it. This is Texas at night, in the country. You don't ask questions or look too long at something that maybe somebody didn't want you to see. True of nocturnal happenings of a questionable nature anywhere, but especially gatherings of naked people in the woods in Texas, where rogue rent-free activity is rife. It did not look like it needed help, or like we could have caught up to it. Could it have been an animal that for some reason had the appearance and upright gait of a human? Sure, but I've spotted all kinds of animals out here. Even jumped out of the car and chased down escaped cows, so I generally know what I'm looking at with regards to the local wildlife. Anyone can be wrong, though, and light can play tricks, but I'm pretty sure I saw what I saw. Next story. This happened to my dad and my son, his grandson, who saw 2 orange basketball-sized orbs floating against the tree line while out corning. It's a country verb. It's the roads for pigs one night. This happened out between Vanderpool and Medina, Texas. My dad's first reaction was there were poachers on the property, and it was headlights across the valley on an adjacent hill. But then he snapped and realized that there wasn't a road on that hill. When his eyes adjusted, he could tell they were much closer, like 100 yards from them, and bobbing up and down slightly, independently. His brain then went to people on foot with flashlights. But that was quickly rejected because there were no beams and the lights were about 10 feet off the ground. My son was 14 at the time and able to keep his wits about him, enough to not freak out as he kept his eyes on them. My dad had grabbed his phone to call the other game handler when he initially thought poachers, so he looked away for a second. My son said they didn't make a sound, just floated while slightly bobbing, moved horizontally in front of the tree line, then faded out. They were in what we call the Middle Valley, which has huge hills on 3 sides, making it the darkest part of the ranch. They just turned the lights of the mule off to sit in the dark and silence a bit to listen for hogs on the road they'd just cornered. They were looking up at the stars, then the orange lights caught their eyes. My dad is a closet paranormal fan. He was like me as a kid, always reading creepy stuff and scaring himself. He's 65 and likes to pretend that he doesn't really believe in any of that and is super skeptical of everything. But when they got back to the house, the look on his face told me he had just seen something he couldn't explain. He was both excited and scared. He kept trying to rationalize what it could have been, but nothing fit. He found some information about the legend of the Medina lights, but I don't know if that really correlates with what they saw. And until this day, we've never found an explanation for it. Next story. There's a little backstory. I've always had weird experiences, be it ghosts or strange animals. It just always seems to follow me and my family. We had just recently moved into an old farmhouse just off the main road. The house comes with 88 acres of land and only 4 people live on or near the land, including us. When we first moved in, nothing abnormal happened. It was just a small, out-of-the-way house that seemed like a new start for us all. After a month of us living there, we started hearing strange noises outside at night, but nothing too serious. One night we decided to have a fire and get drunk. And well, me and a few other guys that were there that night, we decided to do some night fishing. While fishing in the pond that was maybe a mile into the woods, we started hearing screaming. We just thought it was one of the girls back at the house, so we headed back. But on our way back, we started to notice that there were no more sounds. No sounds of nature, no birds, no crickets, nothing. So we stopped to listen. As we did this, we heard the sounds of chains rushing towards us, maybe 15 feet from us. I pointed a gun at where we thought the sound stopped and fired a shot at the ground, a couple of inches from it. After a minute passed, the chains rushed to the house, and nothing happened after that until we all got inside and started going to bed. We all heard a female scream again, but behind it there was a deep, distorted laugh. After that, nothing happened until 3 weeks later. Me and my dad, we went out fishing at the pond late in the afternoon. As it's inches closer to dusk, we noticed 3 pale white animals on the opposite side of the pond. But as soon as we noticed, the animals ran, but instead of running on all fours like a normal animal, they jumped up on their hind legs and jumped 8 feet into a tree and hopped from tree to tree away from us. As we saw this, we decided to head back home, but on the way back, we heard the tree start rustling, and it kept getting closer and closer until we got to the house and locked the doors. I decided to set cams in the woods and around the house. At first, I didn't get anything, just deer and wolves, until one night, a cam close to the house, there was movement for an hour and then it moved back. Nothing really came of that until one night. After a long day of working, I decided to play a video game with a few friends about 11 at night. I heard 2 taps, but I ignored it thinking it was on the game. It continued till 2 in the morning. Periodically, every 5 minutes, 2 consecutive taps would happen. I finally took my headphones off and heard it at my window. And when I looked, I saw orange eyes, 7 feet off the ground. After 2 minutes of staring at each other, it moved closer to the window and smiled at me, with blood-stained daggers for teeth. Its face looked like a pale wolf-like face with some decay along the sides of its head and neck. After doing this, it backed away and left. Now, every night something happens. Something rushes onto the porch and claws at the door. And then it bellows out a laugh that almost sounds like a deranged man crossed with a hyena. I don't know. I'm torn between staying in my house and taking some of my friends going into the woods with guns to try to find out some way to end this torment. What do you think? Next story. My fiance first encountered this thing in 2013. Him and his friends were on a camping trip up in the woods in Maine. Middle of nowhere, literally nowhere. No houses, nothing for miles. Then a small fire going, but due to the rain, it was hard to keep it going. They kept hearing something trying to creep up on them. It was kind of noisy and it sounded big, but was only on 2 feet. They started throwing rocks in the direction they heard the footsteps, and suddenly this thing let out a blood-curdling scream. Nothing any of them had heard before. He described it as something that sounded like a fox, but slightly more human. It went crashing through the woods, very clumsily, but kept trying to come back. They had to fend it off most of the night. The second time was about a year and a half later. He was out on a solo camping trip in Vermont, since that was something he enjoyed. He heard the exact same blood-curdling scream he had heard the first time. He was just sitting alone in the dark, looking up at the stars with no fire or anything, when suddenly he heard the scream again. He quickly packed everything up and just went home. No hesitation. The third time was a few nights ago. He was supposed to go out to my car to grab us a couple of bottles of water when he heard voices. Due to us recently having someone come into our property and steal from our landlords, he went to investigate. He called me and told me to let the dog out. As he was sneaking around, the voices turned out to be a snarling sound. He quickly stopped, turned off his flashlight, and dropped to the ground. The dog was standing next to him. Suddenly, he saw two glowing eyes, and it lunged at him. The dog got excited and started chasing it. The whole time they chased it, it screamed, and it ran faster than our dog. Even though he was running with a flashlight, he couldn't make out a shape of its body. He said how far apart the eyes were, and it made it seem kind of big. He couldn't get a shape or color besides where its body should be was a slight discoloration of the darkness around it. It kept looking back at him while he chased it. And yes, its eyes were just glowing while it screamed. Our dog chased it off into the woods, but luckily she came back. I think it was trying to lure him in by making it sound like voices, but the dog scared it off. He said he couldn't get a height because the eye level kept changing from squatting to standing up, and then it started running. Even now, I'm not sure I want to know what it is. I just don't want him to go out of doors anymore.